The city shimmered beneath Daniel Cross's penthouse windows, glass towers reflecting the gold of the setting sun. Inside, laughter echoed against marble walls and silk curtains. Flutes of champagne clinked. Music pulsed, low and rhythmic. Daniel stood at the center of it all. 47. Tailored suit, silver cufflinks, skin tanned from months abroad. Beside him, Ava, young, flawless, bored. His latest investment that he raised his glass. To freedom, he said loudly, voice sliding. Between arrogance and drunken joy. His guests, lawyers, venture capitalists, influencers clinging to relevance, cheered. Freedom from mistakes. From liabilities. Laughter followed. He drained the glass. Ava watched him, unreadable that if this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and like, spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. Daniel let the applause fade. Then, with deliberate cruelty, he continued. Some men mourn divorce. I prefer to celebrate. He smiled. What's left behind rarely deserves regret. A pause. More polite laughter. Even Ava smiled thinly. He poured more champagne. As he did, his hand trembled, only slightly. He looked at his phone. No notifications that he locked the screen. Problem? Ava asked softly. Daniel forced a smile. Nothing that concerns you. She didn't reply. The party rolled on around them, voices blending with the hum of wealth. Waiters circled silently. The penthouse gleamed. Yet Daniel drifted, moving aimlessly from conversation to conversation. His charisma was there, but mechanical. Polished, but empty. Behind closed doors, his mind was elsewhere. Every 10 minutes, he checked his phone. Ava noticed. He excused himself once, then twice, retreating to his private study. There, with the door locked, he scrolled through messages. Still nothing. He made a call, straight to voicemail that he whispered to himself. She wouldn't. Back at the party, Ava wandered alone. She listened as guests gossiped about the divorce. How? Elena Cross had vanished without a word. No countersuit. No public scene. Just silence. Strange for a woman betrayed so thoroughly. Ava wondered too, when Daniel reappeared. He looked pale, though he masked it well. He lifted another glass, but didn't drink. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it, but Ava saw. Later, as night blanketed the city, Daniel stood alone on the balcony. His guests thinned. Ava approached cautiously, watching him stare at the skyline like a man searching for something lost. What are you expecting out there? She asked softly. He didn't answer. The silence between them stretched, heavy and cold. Behind them, the party died. Daniel checked his phone one last time. No message, no call. Just silence. The house was small. Not poor, just simple. Walls once white, now dulled to ivory. Windows closed. Curtains drawn. Elena Cross sat alone at the kitchen table. No music. No television. Only the ticking of an old brass clock mounted crookedly on the wall. Its steady rhythm filled the emptiness. Papers lay before her. Divorce settlement documents, thick and impersonal. Her name was printed neatly across each page. She read nothing. Her pen moved slowly, elegantly, as she signed her name where instructed. Page after page. No hesitation. No tremor in her hand. She signed as if the act was irrelevant. Her eyes, dark, heavy-lashed, betrayed nothing. The clock ticked. She finished that a long pause followed. She didn't move. Not yet. Her gaze drifted toward the empty seat across from her. The seat that once belonged to him. Years ago. Another life. Her expression didn't soften. It hardened in that silence. There was no grief. No mourning. Only calculation. Then, a knock, soft. 3 times. Precise. Elena stood without urgency, chair sliding back against the old tile floor. She crossed the room barefoot, her thin cotton dress brushing her knees. She paused at the door, listening. Before unlocking it, a single envelope lay on the step. Black wax sealed it shut. No address. No note. She picked it up. A quiet click as she closed the door again. Back at the table, she examined the envelope under. The yellow kitchen light. Her fingertips brushed the wax seal, a symbol unfamiliar to most, but not to her. A half circle. 4 dots beneath it. She smiled, for the first time. Not wide. Not joyful. A thin, knowing smile. She cracked the seal without hesitation. Inside, just one folded page. She read, eyes narrowing, then widening. Her lips parted slightly, more in satisfaction than surprised. The bottom of the letter, one sentence. He taught you to stay silent. Now teach him to listen. Elena folded the page once more. She pressed her palm flat against it. The clock ticked louder, or perhaps it only seemed to. She stood. She turned toward the hallway, where the shadows deepened in the silence of her modest home. The war had begun, and no one heard her claim victory. Not yet. Ava heard him again in the darkened master suite. Daniel stood at the far window, phone pressed to his ear. His voice low, urgent. He thought she slept. She didn't. Night after night. The same calls. Same locked briefcase he carried from room to room. Same documents he never left unattended. When she questioned softly, he brushed her aside with a kiss or silence. But tonight, she listened closer. No, she wouldn't dare, Daniel whispered. Not after everything. A pause. Do it anyway. The call ended. Ava lay still, her heart pacing to breakfast. Daniel wore the mask. Crisp shirt, clean shave, casual smile. But his phone never left the table. He barely touched his coffee. Who were you talking to last night? Ava asked carefully. He didn't flinch. No one important. You said her name. Daniel's eyes flicked up, just for a second, then softened. You're overthinking. I heard. You didn't hear anything. His voice was smooth. Now, controlled. Ava's chest tightened. Her spoon rested untouched in her cereal. Why do you lock the briefcase, Daniel? He smiled gently, almost pitying. Because that's what adults do, Ava. She laughed hollow. I'm not a child. Daniel leaned forward. His tone dropped, intimate and cold. No, but you need to learn when not to ask questions. Ava froze. Silence fell between them. Later that afternoon, she searched. Daniel was out, supposedly at the office. Ava crept through the penthouse. His study, his files, locked drawers, even his closet, where behind tailored suits, she found 2 spare phones wrapped in cloth. She couldn't unlock them. When she heard the elevator hum, her panic surged. She fled the study. Daniel entered minutes later. He moved silently, too silently. Ava pretended to read on the sofa. He watched her. Lose something? His voice was casual, but his eyes weren't. No. He crossed the room slowly. Then, without warning, he grabbed her wrist. Hard. She gasped. You touched the briefcase. I didn't. His grip tightened. Ava winced. He leaned close. I don't like liars. Fear rose in her throat, sharp and sudden. Then, as quickly as it began, he let go. Daniel stepped back, adjusting his cuffs as if nothing happened. You're imagining things, he said softly. Ava stood frozen as he walked away. Her skin burned where he'd held her. The man she thought she loved wasn't the man who lived here. She wasn't sure who he was at all. The night air hung heavy around Daniel's estate. Moonlight carved pale lines across the manicured lawn. Inside, silence ruled, until he heard it. A low, slow crunch of tires on gravel. Daniel's eyes snapped open. He sat up in bed, heart quickening. Ava stirred beside him, but he didn't wake her. Carefully, he slipped from the sheets and crossed to the wall-mounted control panel. CCTV screens flickered to life. There, at the gates, a black limo. Long, sleek, motionless. Daniel narrowed his eyes. No headlights. No engine hum. Just sitting there, as if it belonged. He zoomed the feed closer. The driver's seat? Emptied. A chill traced his spine. He tapped the intercom. Security, report. A pause. Then static. Security, do you copy? Silence. His throat tightened. He pulled on his robe and stepped into the hallway, bare feet silent against the polished floors. Down the grand staircase, past marble columns, toward the front security room. Inside, monitors glowed. No guards. Only the faint echo of that same crunching sound, replaying over the speakers. Daniel's pulse hammered. Someone had overridden his feed. The main gate. Through the cameras, the limo remained still. A black shape in the night. Watching, with shaking fingers, Daniel unlocked the estate's inner gates remotely. If it moved, he would know. It didn't. It just waited. He called again. Team 1, respond. Finally, a voice crackled back. Sir, no one's here. What? The car. It's gone. Daniel's stomach dropped. He looked up at the screens. The limo was still there, right in front of him, but not to them. Suddenly, the feed cut to black. Daniel stumbled back. The silence pressed in. Then, A knock point, 3 slow raps, echoing through the marble foyer that he spun, breath shallow. The front doors. Someone stood outside that he hesitated. After a long moment, he stepped forward. He unlocked the door, swung it open. Nothing. The driveway was empty. No limo. No driver. Just cold night air. Daniel slammed the door. When he returned to the control room, the screens were blank, except one. A single frame. A still image. Of the black limo. Waiting, Daniel destroyed the screen. But when midnight came the next night, it returned. Daniel's phone rang before dawn. He ignored it. It rang again. This time he answered, voice rough. What? His attorney's voice cracked through the line. You need to come to the office. Now. Why? She reopened the case. Daniel's blood chilled. What case? Custody. Daniel sat up slowly, heart thudding. That's impossible. It's happening. Silence. A silence Daniel knew too well. Then his lawyer whispered, it's Elena. By the time Daniel reached the glass tower downtown, the sun had barely risen. His lawyer, Gregory Lane, waited at the entrance, sweating despite the morning chill. No press yet, Lane said. But if this gets out, show me. They moved inside. Upstairs. Security doors locked behind them. Into the conference room. Lane played the footage. Black and white security video flickered onto the screen. Daniel leaned in. The timestamp. Last night. Elena. She walked into the firm's main office just before midnight. Calm. Measured. No hesitation. In her hand. A small black case. She shouldn't have access to this building, Daniel said, voice thin. She didn't ask for access, Lane replied. She was let in. By who? Lane hesitated. By your former head of security. Daniel's jaw clenched. On screen, Elena approached the receptionist's desk. She didn't speak. She simply opened the case and laid 4 sealed files onto the marble counter. Daniel leaned forward. The camera caught the names. He froze. 4 names. Each one a name Daniel never spoke aloud. Never even acknowledged. Each name paired with one word. Air. Explain this, Lane whispered. Daniel said nothing. The footage continued. Elena stood silently for 7 minutes. Then she left. She never said a word. Daniel's throat tightened. His mind raced. She had known. All these years, she could have claimed your estate, your holdings, years ago, Lane said carefully. Instead, she waited. What? Daniel looked hollow now. His voice was dry. She never wanted money. Then, what? Daniel stood slowly, staring at the paused screen. Elena's face was calm, unbothered. Her silence was deliberate. She wanted control, Daniel whispered. Lane swallowed. I can bury this, the lawyer said. For now. But Daniel wasn't listening. His gaze was locked on those files. Names he thought buried. Secrets he thought erased. Elena hadn't disappeared. She had prepared. Daniel stepped out of the room. In the empty hallway, he braced himself against the wall. His empire wasn't being dismantled. It was being inherited by sons he never knew or sons he'd refused to know. And now, they were coming. Not for money, not for a settlement, but for him. Daniel sat motionless, staring at the silent monitor. His mind refused to process what his eyes confirmed. For sealed files. For names. For heirs, his blood. Explain it, Gregory Lane said again, voice low, afraid. I can't protect you if I don't know. Daniel's voice cracked. It's impossible. But it wasn't. Years ago, late in their marriage, Elena had begged him for children. He had refused. Claimed he wasn't ready. In truth, Daniel had always believed fatherhood made men weak. Vulnerable. He kept their marriage sterile, controlled. What he didn't know was that Elena found another way. In the office now, Lane placed fresh documents before him. Legal filings. Quiet. Precise. Elena had never contested the divorce. Never fought for money. But here, in dry black ink, she had launched the attack that mattered. She had filed for recognition of paternity. 4 times. She used IVF, Lane said softly. During your marriage. Using samples you voluntarily submitted for your own medical treatments. Daniel's stomach twisted. She used your genetic material, Daniel. Legally, those boys are yours. Daniel's head fell into his hands. She hid them. Lane hesitated. No. She raised them. Just without you. Silence. Daniel stood abruptly. He paced the glass office like a caged animal, fists clenched. Where are they? We don't know. Daniel spun, eyes wild. Find them. Lane said nothing. Daniel grabbed his phone. He dialed Elena's old number. Voicemail that he called again. Nothing. Again. At last, he spoke. Quiet, but shaking. What do you want? Only silence answered. Daniel hurled the phone across the room. It shattered. For the first time in his life, Daniel Cross didn't know how to win. Because this wasn't a negotiation. It was an inheritance. And it wasn't his IT that moment, outside. The glass tower. A black limousine pulled up to the curb. NO driver visible. NO message. Just waiting. Gregory Lane looked down at his phone. She's filed for a court summons. Daniel swallowed hard. When? Lane looked at him. Midnight. Daniel staggered back a step. That's impossible. Lane nodded once. No, Daniel. It's already begun. Back in his penthouse, Ava sat alone on the edge of their shared bed. Daniel hadn't come home. In the silence. Her phone lit up. An unknown number. .1 message. .4 words. Ask him about us. She stared. Beneath it, a photo loaded slowly. .4 boys. Teenagers. Each face. Unmistakably Daniel's. Ava's hand trembled. Somewhere in the dark city, Elena watched from a distance. Her war was quiet. Her army was ready. And now, her sons would speak. Ava sat trembling in the silent penthouse. She had spent the night searching. Through Daniel's locked drawers, forgotten documents buried behind wine cases, folders marked as medical records. And she found them. Medical release forms, consent waivers, all signed by Daniel. But not for himself, for Elena. Procedures authorized. Treatments denied. IVF requests blocked. Surgery scheduled without her knowledge. Control. Years of it. Not physical. Not loud, but quiet. Legal. Silent. And now, Ava saw it all. When the elevator chimed, she didn't flinch. She stood waiting as Daniel entered, suit disheveled, eyes hollowed. He stopped when he saw her. What are you doing awake? Ava held up the file. He said nothing. Her voice shook. You used her body like property. Daniel exhaled slowly, carefully. You don't understand. I do now. You're not her. No, Ava said softly. I'm not. Silence. Daniel stepped closer, voice tightening. She was ungrateful. I gave her everything. You stole her life. His control. Cracked. She kept those boys from me. Ava's eyes filled. She saved them from you. Daniel's hands shook at his sides. I loved her. Ava whispered. No, she stepped back. You owned her. Daniel broke, then he sank to the floor, head in his hands. I didn't want to be my father. A confession. Raw. Useless. Ava crouched. But not to comfort him. Her voice was steady now. She didn't lose you, Daniel. He looked up, broken. Ava stood. She freed herself. And she left, without fear, without regret. Daniel didn't follow. He stayed kneeling. As the city lights flickered behind the glass. In the end, he was left with silence and no one to call. The penthouse glittered again. Laughter. Music. A second party. The same guests, but their smiles were thinner now. They noticed Daniel's absence between toasts, his distracted gaze, the tightness in his jaw. But tonight, Daniel forced normalcy. Another bottle opened. Another speech delivered. To freedom, he said again, hollow now. His voice failed to rise above the music. No1 really cheered. Ava wasn't there. And people noticed that at exactly 11:57, Daniel felt it. A shift. Not sound. Not movement. Just presence. He crossed to the balcony and saw it. The black limousine. Parked at the gate. This time, no camera feed. No screens. No denial. It was there. In real life. Waiting, his hand trembled on the railing. Behind him, the party droned on. Oblivious. Midnight. Struck. The limo's doors opened. Slowly, silently. One by one. They stepped out. 4 figures. Boys. No young men. Daniel's heart lurched. Even at distance. He saw it. Their faces, the bone structure, the eyes, his sons, his blood. He backed away from the balcony, breathing uneven, shaking his head, whispering no, but his body collided with the glass door. A guest noticed his panic. Others followed. What's wrong? Daniel didn't answer. A security guard approached. Sir, the elevator. Daniel's stomach dropped. The private elevator. The one that bypassed security. It activated. No code required. The doors chimed. Silence rippled across the penthouse. The music stopped. Everyone turned. The elevator doors opened. and they stepped inside. Point four boys. Not boys. Not anymore. Teenagers. 17. Maybe 18. Each dressed plainly. Each carrying nothing. But their presence stole the air from the room. Daniel froze. His guests, CEOs, attorneys, influencers, parted instinctively. No one spoke. From behind the four, another figure emerged. Elena, she stepped forward, calm, dressed in black, her face unreadable. She said nothing. Daniel stared at her. His lips moved, but no sound came. Elena's gaze never wavered. She wasn't here to explain. She wasn't here to argue. She was here to let him see. See what he had denied, what he had abandoned, and what now stood in front of him. His legacy, his heirs. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, one of the boys stepped closer, closer still. That he stopped 3 feet from Daniel and smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. Daniel backed away. Leave. No one moved. Elena watched, her silence louder than any accusation. The boy, his eldest, tilted his head. You left first. For words. Daniel's body sagged. The boy stepped back. Elena placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Then, without a word, she turned. She led them back into the elevator. No drama, no confrontation. Just the simple, inescapable truth. They existed. And they had let him see. The elevator doors closed. The guests remained frozen. Daniel dropped to his knees. No one moved to help. Somewhere below, the black limo waited, and when the elevator opened, Elena and her son stepped inside. Doors closed. The limo pulled away. Daniel sat there, alone, surrounded, and yet, for the first time, truly abandoned. 3 days passed. Daniel heard nothing. No limo, no calls, no letters, but silence was worse. Then, a message arrived. A courier. Plain envelope. No signature. Inside, one sentence, handwritten. You will meet us. A time. A location. No choice. Daniel arrived alone. An abandoned legal chamber. Cold and used. Marble walls peeling. Once a courtroom. Now, a tomb. They waited. Elena and his 4 sons. She stood silently behind them, like a judge who'd already ruled. Daniel stepped forward, swallowing hard. What do you want? Elena said nothing. One of the boys, his eldest, slid a file across the table. Daniel opened it with trembling fingers. Evidence, medical documents, signed releases, paper trails of control, financial records tracing fraudulent withdrawals from Elena's private accounts. Images of the IVF clinic Daniel believed erased. Everything. Proof. Release. This, Daniel whispered, and you destroy me. Elena met his gaze at last. You destroyed yourself. Her voice, flat, dead. Daniel's knees weakened. What do you want? He asked again, voice thinner now. Ownership, the eldest son answered. Daniel frowned. Of what? Us. The boy's voice never cracked. Daniel staggered back. Elena's eyes narrowed. You refuse to acknowledge them. Now you will. Daniel shook his head. I'll fight. You already lost. Daniel's voice broke. Name your price. Elena spoke softly. Public paternal claim. Full legal acknowledgement. Inheritance rights. And if I refuse? Elena said nothing. She only gestured toward the file. His crimes. She would release them. One of the younger boys watched Daniel carefully. You care more about your money than your name, he said quietly. Daniel turned to them now, desperate. He looked into faces shaped like his own. I can provide, he said. Money, education, connections. No, the eldest said. We don't want your money. Daniel's voice cracked. What do you want? A long silence. Then the boy replied, to be yours. Daniel collapsed into the chair. Elena stood perfectly still. Her voice, when it came, was merciless. Sign the acknowledgement papers. Claim them, or lose everything. Daniel shook his head slowly, tears now threatening. I can't. Elena stepped forward. You can. A pause. Or I can. She turned toward the exit. Her sons followed. The eldest paused last that he looked at. Daniel, this broken man who had been only a myth his whole life. You don't deserve us. Then he left. Daniel sat in silence, alone. His trial was over. The verdict had been his own. The signatures were the easy part. Daniel sat in the same boardroom, where, years earlier, he had signed Elena away. This time, no lawyers argued. No threats lingered in the air. Only papers lay between them. Quiet, clinical, final. Half his fortune, not his settlement, not his punishment. As acknowledgement. Each signature was a confession, each initial, a surrender. When the final page bore his name, Elena stood. She took nothing from him, not even the pen. She looked at him once, eyes dry, expression hollow, and walked out. Her sons followed. The door closed softly behind them. No courtroom. No verdict. Just silence. Daniel sat motionless. The documents remained before him, yet felt like ghosts. They weren't contracts. They were gravestones. And Daniel Cross had buried himself. When he returned to his penthouse, night had already fallen to N.O. Party now to N.O. guests. The marble floors echoed under his footsteps. Ava was gone. Her belongings, her perfume, her soft presence, erased. Only the cold glass and steel remained. Daniel crossed to the bar, poured the whiskey himself. No staff to do it for him now that he didn't drink it. He watched the ice melt, the floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked out over the city. The same skyline he had once toasted. But tonight, it was unfamiliar. The black limo didn't return. Didn't need to. They had taken what they came for. Daniel slid to the floor, glass resting in his palm. Somewhere in the city, Elena lived a life without him. His 4 sons existed without his name. And for the first time, Daniel understood the silence he once mocked. Elena's silence hadn't been surrender. Had been survival. Had been strength. And now, that silence belonged to him alone. He whispered her name once, hollow, in the emptiness. Elena. No one answered. Just like she hadn't answered his calls. Just like his sons hadn't answered his pleas. Daniel Cross, once a king in glass towers, sat in the dark, not defeated, but irrelevant. And in that, he found the punishment he never expected. His freedom, his celebrated divorce, had always been his sentence. Morning light crept through the glass walls. Daniel Cross awoke where he had fallen asleep, on the marble floor, cold and motionless. His glass of melted whiskey lay untouched beside him. The door. A single envelope waited. N.O. knocked. N.O. courier. Just presents. Black wax sealed it. Daniel stared for a long time before moving. He picked it up with trembling fingers, his heart refusing to steady. The seal, a half circle above 4 dots, sent a chill through his veins. He cracked it open. Inside, a letter, handwritten, from Elena. He unfolded it slowly. Daniel, this isn't revenge. I want you to understand that before you read. Further, I never wanted to hurt you. Not when you left. Not even when you locked my life behind contracts and courtrooms. You thought silence was weakness. It wasn't. It was protection. For me. For them. I didn't hide your sons from you to punish you. I hid them to save them. I wanted them to grow up without fearing the man whose name they carried. I wanted them to believe they mattered for who they were, not what you owned. You always believed possession was love, control was security, obedience was loyalty. You taught me that. I taught them something different. They are not your legacy. They are mine. Understand this. They didn't ask to meet you. I did. Not so you could see them, but so they could see you and know what power without love looks like. I told them, meet your father and decide. They decided that I could have destroyed you, Daniel, with every file, every signature, every recorded conversation, but I didn't, because a woman wronged can forgive, but a mother never will. Now you understand. This was never about money. It was about showing you the cost of what you never claimed and letting you live with it. Not punished, just forgotten. Elena, ***. Daniel's hand shook as he finished. He read it twice, then a third time, each word carved deeper than the last. He looked up, throat tight. In the street below, far in the distance, he saw it, the black limo, for the final time. Inside, he knew, sat 4 silent boys, his sons, not his heirs, not his possessions, just shadows of what might have been. The engine stirred. The limo pulled away. Daniel stood frozen at the glass, watching, until the black silhouette disappeared into morning haze. N.O. Goodbye. N.O. hatred. Just absence. In his hand. The letter trembled. The last thing Elena would ever give him. A story without forgiveness. And Daniel finally understood. He had lost the only thing he never believed could be taken, the right to be remembered. And in that silence, the story ended.